एक मिनट. So, good afternoon, one and all present. I, Dr. Sheetal Kamble, on behalf of School of Sciences, PP Savani University, welcome you all for the fourth day of 1 week online faculty development program on research methodology. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, 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 ma'am.
Okay. So, I wish to take this opportunity to welcome our esteemed speaker, Dr. Nachiket Gosavi, sir, and I also welcome all the participants. So we are honored to have with the speaker Dr. Nachiket Gosavi. Now over to you, sir. Please
Thanks a
start
lot,
your
Dr.
talk.
Sheetal. Thanks a lot, Dr. Sheetal. I heard the protocol that has to be followed by Farah ma'am, Sada Farah ma'am, but there are certain changes that I have made to my presentation, so the protocols need not be followed by the participants. So I start by sharing my screen. My first screen there for the participants. I've got two so-called quizzes there, which has to be solved within the
Nachiket sir,
next.
sorry.
Yeah,
Nachiket
yeah,
sir,
yeah,
sorry
yeah,
for interruption.
yeah,
I want to read your brief profile.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So Dr. Nachiket Gosavi is presently working at Sardar Patel Institute of Economic and Social Science. And prior to this present assignment, he was working with Bank of India Senior Manager. Dr. Gosavi PhD from National Institute of Industrial Engineering, NITI, Mumbai. Sir's research interests are in finding cost-effective techno-economic solutions to the problems of premature congestion in the cities of India. And some of his research works are published in the journal titled World Transport Policy and Practice. And presently, Dr. Gosav is working on a project funded by Indian Council of Social Science Research titled Revisiting Passenger Transport in Metropolitan Cities of India. How do people commute? So alongside this, he is visiting faculty at this Tuljapur campus, where he conducts workshops in research methods and methodology for postgraduate program and teaches business ethics. And occasionally, Sir publishes articles in news portals on macroeconomics and transport related issues. So I welcome you, sir. We
Thanks a
can
lot,
start
Dr.
with the
Sheetal.
session.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll share my screen. So the thing is that the protocols were told that we were not supposed to discuss in the middle of the presentation. While in the initial 10 minutes, we will have an open-ended discussion wherein you will have to give certain answers to some kind of, what will you say, brain teasers, as I would call them. From that, we will start our talk or my end talk, which is a soliloquy on research methods and methodologies. I'll share my screen. Now is my screen visible?
Your screen is not visible, sir. Yet.
Yeah, just I'm just trying it out. Just a second.
Yeah.
Okay, is now screen visible now?
Yes, it's visible. Yes, it's visible now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is one of the so-called feed to the brain. You have to fill in the blanks here. And you are allowed to give answers immediately, or you've got 5 minutes, whichever way is comfortable with you. Any answers for this?
Yes, we have received so many answers.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
ma'am.
5, 8. So, most of them are saying 5 and 8,
Okay.
while some were also saying, yeah, they are all saying 5, 8. Some are saying 7, 11. Yeah, 11 and 12. So these are some of the answers.
And what about the second one? The first is correct, 5-8. That's okay.
Yeah, I have received two answers yet. One is 15 and one is 30. For
Okay,
this, yeah,
let them go on answering. Just give them 2-3 minutes. Let them go on answering.
yeah.
Okay, dear friends, you can keep working on these numbers. There's a second slide which will also interest you, which is a non-numerical slide. Have a gaze at this wonderful lady and try to describe her in as few words as possible. What do you see? What can you feel? Etc. 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 Because we are talking about qualitative and quantitative stuff, that's the reason these two first slides have been given. You have got 5 minutes for this. You can describe in as few words as possible. And there's nothing right or wrong in this. I hope you had a good gaze at this person. Now we start with the main or the core of the presentation. Firstly, what I would try to define is what is research methodologies versus research methods. Then I will look at what are the subtypes in it, namely qualitative and quantitative. And then finally, we'll come to the sort which talks about, I'll start giving you an example. And this is one of the latest examples, which is the COVID case, where we look at what is qualitative and what is quantitative in it. Okay, so here is methodology. So what is so special about this methodology? Now, in the first example that I had given you, where I had given you the fill in the blanks, which went as 1, 1, 2, 3, dash, dash, dot, 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 dot. The blanks were to be filled by number 5 and 8. For those who are from computer science or from mathematics or from physics, this was the Fibonacci series. The second string that I had given you was actually a random number generated series. It did not have any pattern whatsoever. So don't bang your heads trying to find out what were the underlying patterns. When we look at the methodologies is actually the fundamental of the research, where you're trying to look at how to solve the problem, or as one calls it, the framework for solving the problem, wherein we are trying to put in the models, wherein we are trying to put in the framework, or alternatively, we try to come up with a priori theoretical basis for the solution. Please understand, this is not your or my assumptions, but these are theoretical assumptions that you are using, or frameworks that you're using to solve the problem. Okay, so methodology, as I've put it, is it Greek and Latin? So I put it as methodology. So it's like the mother of your methods. Now, when we look at the methodology, it is an approach to solve the problem wherein the subject biases also come into picture. Please note, subject biases also come into picture. It need not be fully objective in nature. For this, I'll quote an example which one of my teachers had told me while I was doing my PhD, which was once a mathematician, a physicist, and an engineering student were going through Scotland, and they suddenly saw a black colored lamp in a distance. The engineer concluded that the sheep in Scotland are black. The physicist said, no, you're wrong. At least some sheep in Scotland are black. When the mathematician, who is so-called a perfectionist or so-called believes in specifics, he said, you both are wrong. I would say one side of the sheep in Scotland appears to be black because I'm not able to see the other side of the sheep. Right? So the approaches have to have underpinnings of theories and frameworks. That's the reason we call it as methodology. Once you have been able to identify what is the underlying methodology, we come to the methods. Methods are like the sons of methodology, wherein based on the type of information, the data that you get, you would decide whether it is qualitative, whether it is quantitative, or whether it's a mixture of both of them. I'll go back to my first screen. Here, can I say that I can have a qualitative means of looking at this data? Somebody might say no, somebody might say yes to this. If you say that it is a purely quantitative method because I have got numbers, then somebody who is interested in font types, font sizes, designs might say, no, this is qualitative data because I will be able to understand the psychology of the person who has written this data. Right? So there is nothing like right or wrong, and it is based on your subject's identification which would determine whether it is qualitative or whether it is quantitative. Likewise, when I look at my next screen, which is this wonderful lady, has anybody bothered to gaze at this lady from other different directions? Or you just saw the beautiful lady in her and that's the only thing that you saw? Sadafara ma'am, did you gaze at this wonderful lady?
Yes,
No,
yes.
when we make the picture upside down, it is totally different.
Yes. This is actually a German cartoon which was printed as early as 1918 and was used as a holograph behind coins and on stamps. Okay, now if I were a person who was interested in the numbers, I can actually magnify this image and put it in terms of triangles of different shapes and sizes or rectangles, which is known as graphics, wherein I am trying to identify how the patterns emanate based on triangles and squares. Right? If I was a person who was interested in design, I would have said, oh, this is such a wonderful lady. But the moment you stare it from some other direction, you'll actually see a witch. There's a witch inside this screen. Have you seen that? There's an actually old laggard inside the screen, which is like this old lady, really old lady, which if you stare at it from a different angle, you'll be able to see that. Now, if you are interested in the computers part of it or the numbers part of it, you could have designed this in a different fashion also. Right? So, based on your underlying pinning of what you are looking at, you can convert the problem from a qualitative to a quantitative or the vice versa. The only problems when you come from a qualitative to a quantitative or the vice versa is the underlying problems with it. I'll come to the problems in the next screen. Right. So first and foremost, in the case of methodologies, it is based on assumptions, which are subject assumptions, which is whether this fits into the underpinning a priori knowledge or information that you have from the subject, or whether you can create assumptions to fill in the framework or the theory that you have learned over time. Right? So this is the basic idea that you are looking at a priori information. Right? Now, we are looking at now the qualitative part of, now we'll come to the methods part of it. So from the mother, we'll come to the son. Methods, from the methodology, we normally consider two broad frameworks, which are quantitative and qualitative. The qualitative is subjective, like the first, like the female.
Not getting sound, कोई दिक्कत है क्या?
आपको आवाज आ रही है?
Hello.
Hello, is my voice audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Audible,
Yes,
sir.
yes, Professor Gosavi, you are audible.
Somebody was saying that the voice was not audible. So,
Sir, please check your network. Professor Gosavi is audible to all of us. Thank you.
I have made sure that I remain audible. I've put my phone on hotspot as well as I'm on a Wi-Fi as well as I'm on a cable network. So at least at my end, I've ensured that my communication will not break. So just check up with your communication end. I'm ready to repeat whatever I'm saying once again, not an issue. Does anybody have problem? Just you can type it out in the box, or you can just say that the voice is not audible. In either cases, I'll start repeating again. Okay, I think everybody, there's no response, so I think I'm audible to everybody. Okay, so now the methodologies, from the mother we come down to the son or the daughter, whichever we consider it. There are two primary types. One is called the quantitative and the other is the qualitative. We firstly look at the qualitative side of it. So I'll go back to the first screen. Here, I am trying to understand the beauty or the ugliness, wherein there is no numerical aspects. I am just looking at how somebody looks, how the person has worn clothes, etc., 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 the color of their hair, whether what is the color of her eyes, whether her nose is straight or laggard, or how are her hair, etc., which are basically qualitative in nature, which is there are in terms of adjectives. The moment I look at adjectives, there is a bias. Now I'll give you the classic example of the bias. In my class at Tulsapur, I had put up pictures of different actresses from Bollywood, and I had asked each participant to give me the reason why they think the person is beautiful or ugly in either cases. So everybody said that they like Deepika Padukone. So I said, like, okay, if you like Deepika Padukone, please give the adjectives why you like the person. So somebody said her nose is good, somebody says that her eyes are good, then somebody talked about Madhuri Dixit, they said that her smile was good, her cheeks were good, etc. Individually, when all these compositions were combined together, it came out that the person who popped out of the screen was uglier than individual of them. Right? So subjectivity leads to this problem that your assumptions or your understanding of the subject can differ from the other person's understanding. And as a consequence, these type of researchers are not taken so seriously. When do you look at the qualitative, just for a second. Now, when you look at the qualitative part of it, you look at qualitative only and only when underpinning data is not available, where the underlying logic is not common. For example, 1 is a 1 whether you write it in English or Hindi or Gujarati or any other language. 2 is 2, so on and so forth. In the case of management who use Likert scale like constructs, problem comes the moment you start transform qualitative reasons into quantitative when you ask somebody to rate between 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or 1 to 11. I'll talk about it afterwards. We'll firstly look at the quantitative side of it now. Quantitative is universal and is objective in nature. That means, as I said, 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3. So the moment I say 1 plus 1, it is going to be 2, it is not going to be 2.5. When I say 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, that means it's going to remain 3. Each and every person has a similar or identical understanding of the reasons. So if I say A is greater than B, it will remain greater than B irrespective of how I write it, whether I write it in English or whether I write it in logic or whether I write it in mathematics. For people who are from chemistry, the moment my phyliption changes color, I say the acid base is neutralized. This is a common understanding. This is not going to change whether I am using some other reagent or whether I am using some other acids by titrating them. Right? So this is where your quantitative reasoning comes in. Here, the commonality of understanding is identical. Now comes the problem. Qualitative or quantitative? People who are based in numbers will always say quantitative is better, we don't understand qualitative. But what about the phenomenon which is first of its type? For example, the COVID-19. Doctors did not understand what were its symptoms. Here you go back to the condition where you require a qualitative understanding. For example, I'll give you the other classic examples for people who are from physics background. Einstein gave the general theory of relativity. Said light was the fastest had the highest velocity in the universe. In 1919, during the eclipse, it was tested for the first time. A reporter asked Einstein, if your theory was proven to be wrong numerically, then what would you say? Einstein said, well, that is bad for God, not for me. Here comes the qualitative part of it. He said, I have given you a qualitative reasoning which has an underpinning logic to it. But if the numbers don't suit it, there's a problem with the numbers, not with the logic. Right? So wherever you have a problem where quantities are not available, you will have to go to the qualitative side of it where descriptions and logic start coming into picture. Now, when we look at the quantitative part of it, in quantitative, is subdivided into tools and techniques. What are the tools? So the tools are the broader perspective of methods, which is whether I'm using a statistical tool, a mathematical tool, or some other tool by which I will be able to understand or process the numerical data that I have collated or collected. Techniques is the finer part of the tool, that is whether I'm using regression, what kind of regression is it, whether it is based on time series, which is economic in nature, then I say it is not a statistical regression, but it is an econometric regression. Whether I'm using models in the form of a decay model, which is 1 upon r or 1 upon r square or 1 upon r cube, here I say I'm using a mathematical tool, and if I say I'm specific that I'm using a decay model, then it becomes a technique. So now we reiterate, methodology is the mother or the father, whichever way you consider it. Qualitative and quantitative are the next generation. From that, we decide the tool to be used based on the type of data that you are having. Based on the tool, you subdivide it in the type of technique. So far, so good. Has anybody any problems? Please say yes or no. If everything is clear, I'll go to the next slide. If I was fast, please tell me. I'll reiterate everything. If there are any questions, you can question me right now. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, Professor Gosavi, you are audible.
Yes,
Yes,
so
sir, you
yeah,
are
yeah.
audible.
yeah. So
Yeah.
if anybody has any questions or issues, please, you can ask me right now. I'm ready to reiterate it, because after this, I will go into the sub things of it, where I'm looking at the mixture, which is the new paradigm that we are looking at, which is called the mixed methods. That's the reason I'm asking you this question right now. Does anybody have any problems? Please ask me. You are allowed to put your questions on the chat box or unmute yourselves and question me. Should I assume that everybody has understood everything?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now these type of so the binary sort of system, where we used to talk about qualitative separately and quantitative separately, has now merged, and now we are into no new paradigm, which is called as mixed methods. What is the idea of mixed methods? So historically, we used to say qualitative is objective, quantitative is objective, qualitative is subjective. While there is always the problem where we have looked at black swan like effects, for example, the COVID, the 9/11, or for statisticians, they call it as outliers. You are not able to explain the phenomenon using your standard paradigms or frameworks. Wherever there is lack of data, wherever there is a discrepancy, you start looking at something called as mixed methods. There are no slides on mixed methods because the paradigms are shifting continuously, and especially after COVID-19, people have started to talk about black swans again. Black Swans is a book written by Taleb, and who talks about such phenomena which are considered outliers and which are the most important part of mathematical and statistical methods, which have a low probability, high impact phenomenon. These things are called low probability, high impact phenomenon. So all your artificial intelligence, all your statistical tools and techniques have now started to look at these plus minus 3 sigma phenomenons now. Nobody talks about the standard distribution, normal distribution, because they say what is in normal is normal, everybody can analyze that. What beyond that? So all your artificial intelligence has come about because now they have started to model the error term rather than modeling the variable. Okay, so here starts the present condition, which is the COVID-19. So here starts the problem with COVID-19. First case comes in China. As early as November, everybody says it's a pneumonia, some kind of pneumonia, some kind of flu. Nobody knows about it. Everybody said it was pneumonia. So till as late as December, COVID-19 was considered as a pneumonia. For those people who are interested in digital signal processing or DSP, there are a lot of X-rays that lie on one of these open sources who have tried to look at the lung X-rays to understand what impact does corona have on the lungs. And somebody from IIT Surat has even gone on to identify an algorithm by which they are able to a priori determine whether a person is going to suffer from COVID-19 or is suffering from COVID-19. Right? So here starts the problem. Okay, could I have said, no, I want numbers, then only I can say that, okay, this is the symptom or these are like the symptoms. Like for example, once you say flu, I have to have a running nose, I have to have a fever. In the case of COVID, I did not have a running nose, I just had fever and a dry cough. I would only and only come to know about it after I had collected abundant data. That meant that I was converting qualitative attributes to quantitative, which meant that I am not saying that there's only qualitative research or quantitative research, but I had to look at mixed research or a mixed methodology or a mixed method, as one would call it. Right. So here comes when I was looking at number of patients, what were their symptoms, etc., etc. I collated them, I computed them. Then I started to look at what are the underlying variables or what are the underlying symptoms which are coming out to be common. And then eventually I said, no, you had to have a fever, you could have a dry cough, you could have a problem in breathing, that means your lung got impacted, or because your nose was completely blocked, you did not have a sense of taste or smell. But these were the standard. But does that mean there were no other symptoms? That was not the case. So there were other symptoms, like people would have nausea, they would have pain in their neck or the legs, or they could have headaches. Then what happened to them? Because it did not fit the standard pattern, where it was either the mode or the median that I was looking at, I did not consider them as a standard symptom in the current case. But these are also symptoms which have been listed as a part of WHO and WHO linked research. Just a minute. So here I have talked about two paradigms which were normally used, which was qualitative and quantitative. Because we found that there are lacunas in either of them, we have to use mixed methods. These are the three paradigms that exist as on date in terms of methods and methodologies. But the problem is, once you come to fields of management and the new engineering field, where you are trying to understand what are people feeling about something or how do they feel about the taste, or what is their user experience in terms of screen brightness, etc., etc., etc. Like for example, one of my friends is working on something called as user interface and user experiences, a very jargon word which is used in terms of computer science as well as in terms of mobile technology, where they're trying to reduce the exposure of radiation to your eyes or so on and so forth. So where you're using numerical values for adjectives. I'll be circulating these slides by tomorrow, because these slides I've looked at them subsequently. They are not a part of the original slide set. I'm just giving you a background to it. I will give you the complete slide set through the organizers tomorrow about the mixed methods also. So there, what has happened is that you look at it in terms of a Likert scale and a numerical value, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're asking a person to rank them. The problem with such a ranking is that, technically speaking, it is equidistant. That is, 1 and 2 has a gap of 1, 2 and 3 has a gap of 1. But if I say I strongly agree versus I agree, the gap between both of them need not be identical. Here comes the problem where you not only require to use statistical tools with an underlying caution that using some tool like a principal component analysis or in structural equation modeling will give you results, but these results may have an underlying error because of a tool that did not look at feelings in a different fashion and assumed it to be linear in nature. For example, I'll give you the classic example of Europe. So somebody said, this is a story of Paris. Somebody said, it is very hot. Somebody said, why do you think it is very hot? He said, the temperatures are 32 degrees Celsius. My friend who was in Europe, he said, 32 degrees Celsius is the standard temperature in Mumbai. What the hell are you talking? I'm feeling cold here. Here comes a problem where the perceptions change. And as a consequence, you are supposed to look at both quantitative, qualitative, alongside different methodologies which lie in ethnography and grounded theory, where upfront assumptions are not available. That is, there is no framework, there is no structure, there is no theoretical foundation. You have to look at it in the terms of ethnography also. So the modern paradigm in terms of methodologies is not only you use mixed methods, but you have to look at interdisciplinary research. With this, I am concluding the presentation, because I would have wanted that this should have been a class and where we could have interacted face on face, because I understand there are a lot of people from diverse backgrounds, and getting the examples over the PPT, because that was going to be very difficult for me. Sadafara ma'am, if there are questions, please ask them to put in, tabulate them.
Yes, Professor Gosavi.
So you can ask them to ask questions, because the thing is that each and every person would have a different call on this, because it is based on their understanding that they would ask questions.
Okay, yeah. So all the participants are requested to ask questions, whatever questions they have, to Professor Gosavi.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I would like to know for my study, how I will know that, like you suggested, at mixed methods,
Yes.
we have to go for qualitative as well as quantitative. But then, because we are a beginner, so how we will know that for which concept we have to go for qualitative and for which concept we have to go for quantitative methods? So, like whether how to know this, sir,
Yes, ma'am.
or
Ma'am,
yes.
your question is apt and appropriate. Now, the thing is that wherever you have got numerical data, which is common, which whose understanding is common across the field, irrespective of what. So, like for example, measures like temperature, right? Or wherever you have quantitative data available, and you are looking at coming out with inferences based on these sort of variables, you can take up quantitative analysis. Wherever there is
Okay.
perceptive issues of perception, like could you tell me
Yes,
what is
yes.
your subject? Accordingly, I'll be able to give you an example.
Uh, Professional preparedness of teachers.
Okay, right. So now, when we are looking at professional preparedness of teachers, I might have an understanding of, if first and foremost, how am I defining the professional preparedness? So is it in terms of degree or is it in terms of knowledge? If it is in terms of degree, I have got a numerical value to it, whether he is a graduate, a postgraduate, or a PhD,
Yes, yes,
right? But if it is in terms of knowledge, it becomes a problem. How do you define the knowledge, right?
knowledge. Hmm. Yes.
Here
Okay.
you will have to go on with qualitative analysis and not quantitative analysis.
Okay, Professor Gustavi, there is one more question. What exactly are widely accepted methods that suit all streams? Was asked by Anushka Joshi.
Anushka, it is again dependent on the study that you're carrying out, right? Like for example, if you're doing it in computer science or in mathematics, you are looking at mainly quantitative analysis. The moment you convert the computer science like a digital signal processing, you have to look at both qualitative and quantitative, where the quantitative starts looking in terms of types of fractals, etc., fractal shapes, etc. So it is again dependent on the underlying subject that you're trying to research.
Okay, there is another question by Miss Nalini Wagmare. Which methodology adapt for folk culture studies?
The folk culture studies has ethnographic studies. The ethnographic and grounded theories are the best methodologies that you can use for, especially for tribal studies, etc. Folklores, folkways, tribal studies are all looked through ethnology, as one would call it, not ethnographic studies, but ethnology.
Okay, all the participants, you please ask questions. Let us have a discussion with Mr. Professor Nachiket Gosavi. So please ask more and more questions, please. Let us have a dynamic session just now. So there is one more question by Dr. Aparna Singh from our department. What is the difference between methodology and work plan?
Basically, the work plan happens after you have determined the methodology that you're going to follow. So methodology is like the framework or the structure. Based on that structure, you'll be able to identify what kind of data you're able to get. So that is all. Your work plan is all your research design, as they call it in the lingo. They call it as research design or work plan. The methodology is a step prior to you designing the work plan. Here you're looking at a structure which is a theoretical structural framework.
Okay. Uh, there is one more question. Uh, Nalini Wagmare is asking what is interdisciplinary methods? Please explain, sir.
Basically, interdisciplinary methods they have got multiple disciplines. Like for example, I'm an economist by training, right? So if I'm looking at something like I'm looking at transport usage, I mean use of public transport. I require to understand what are the psychological aspects why people use or do not use public transport. I can use economic concepts like what is the cost of transport, but then you come out with these wonderful aspects which is cleanliness and or perception of threat. Here I am looking at psychological aspects, aspects from economics, aspects from sociology, and that is how I try to come out with the understanding of public transport use. In the case that you're looking at something like a folklore or folkways or folk art, here you have to understand. So there is this presently on the Hindu, there is this photograph challenge that is going on where they are trying to compile photographs, black and white photographs over time. So you compile them, you look at the literature, you look at the folklore, etc., to compile how the folkways have over time changed. So here you're not just looking at understanding of sociology, but you're looking at sociology, photography, then customs, how might be the Britishers might have influenced, how the majoritarian class might have influenced the language, etc. So there's linguistics, there's sociology, there is photography, everything comes into picture then. So this is how it becomes interdisciplinary rather than it being only a sociological or a linguistic research. I hope I've been able to answer.
Yes, Professor Gosavi. There is one more question by Professor Ashish Mathur from Physiotherapy Department of PP Savari. Sir, how to design questionnaire based on qualitative methods? And he has further extended his question by asking, what about its validity?
Well, validity is tested statistically using wonderful measures like the Cronbach alpha. But the problem is that whenever you have got whenever you're converting qualitative data into quantitative, you will have to first and foremost define what are these qualities that you are looking at and whether there is an underlying quantity associated with it. It has to be very well defined. For example, because you're in physiotherapy, one of my colleagues was working on lower back pain. She's an ergonomist. So she used to say that whenever we try to define pain, it was a headache for us because a pain, even a small hit could have been considered as a pain, while performing musicians, they used to think pain is pain when we start actually hurting our body. So when she gave a scale from 0 to 100, they used to say when we started to take 3 or 4 painkillers at one go, that was the time we considered it to be as pain. So you have to firstly understand, or you'll have to firstly define what is this qualitative term and then transform it. Without this underlying definition of this qualitative, you will not be able to convert it into quantity, and even if you manage to do it, you will have problems when you will be doing the analysis in terms of numerical analysis. So you will have to firstly define the qualitative term, convert it to quantitative, make sure that the qualitative and the quantitative are in accordance, and then on you do a Cronbach alpha. The Cronbach alpha is the standard method for testing your validity, and then go ahead with the remaining analysis.
Okay. There is one more question by Ishita Das. How do you combine qualitative and quantitative methods in social sciences research?
Ma'am, wherever you do not have numerical value associated with a phenomenon, you will always have to do a qualitative research. So certain things, like for example, I am doing my work is on public transport or use of public transport, or how for what distance do people travel. Everybody thought that people would be traveling, I mean, for a place like Mumbai, everybody thought people would be traveling like this 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers because you find locals fully occupied. Well, crazily enough, it was found that majority, majority of the class, that as I call this statistical mode, it's around 20% of the population resided at the place of their work. I do not have any reasons why this happens. So I go down and start exploring and try to identify what is this phenomenon. Eventually, I find that there is this whole roadside secondary economy that is flourishing. For example, your lariwalas, they stay and they reside at the place of their work. The wall shops of Mumbai or the Dharavi, where they stay in the shed above their workshops. So such phenomena were never a part of the transport studies. So here, wherever you do not have underlying data, where you do not have underlying reasons which can be given in numerical form, you will always and always have to fall back on qualitative research. For people who are in the medicine background, there is something called as a Bombay blood group, a rare phenomenon. Nobody knows how this Bombay blood group firstly happens. Right? So here, there's no numerical data available. You will have to fall back on qualitative. So whether it is a form, whether it is the biological development, whether it is inheritance, whether it is a genetic dominance, etc., you will have to identify that.
Okay. There is one more question by Akshay Patel. Sir, what is the difference between qualitative, quantitative, and quasi-quantitative characters?
Normally, quasi-quantitative is when you have transformed a qualitative quantitative parameter into a quantitative. It is called quasi-quantitative. Quasi means pseudo or like.
Okay. Participants do ask your questions. Let us have a dynamic question answer session. I request all the participants to ask more and more questions.
Because the thing is that I am requesting you to ask questions because the methods and methodologies tend to be different across all the fields. So there is nothing like A is correct or B is correct. So if somebody says I'm doing my work in computer science and I'm looking at user experience in terms of a graphics user interface, the thing goes towards psychology. While a psychologist who might be looking at IQ levels might be looking at it in terms of numerical analysis, which goes towards statistics.
Anushka Joshi is asking, can you elaborate a bit on hypothesis writing, how important it is?
First and foremost, please understand the hypothesis is like an assumption that you are creating. Hypothesis, the exact dictionary meaning of hypothesis is assumption. What you're assuming, whether it is true or not, is what you are testing. That is the reason it is called hypothesis testing. Not all researchers require you to have an hypothesis. Please understand this part. If you are doing ethnographic studies, if you are doing phenomenological studies, you don't have an hypothesis for that. Hypotheses are there only and only when you are looking at underlying statistical patterns. So as a result, you say, I have either accepted a hypothesis or I have rejected a hypothesis. First and foremost, your hypotheses are structured in such a way that they have to be testable. Please understand, they have to be testable. For example, if I say, I am testing whether the sun rises in the east. First, the moment I put in this sort of statement, I am screwed up. I will tell you the reasons why I'm screwing up my research. First and foremost, I'll have to define what is sun. Then I'll have to define what is east. The moment I say that the brightest object that rises from whichever place is the sun, the brightest object in the sky is the sun, and somebody says no, the Sirius is the Sirius constellation is the brightest object in the sun, in the horizon, in the space, I have negated my whole assumption. Whenever you are framing a hypothesis, it has to be testable. Second part, it should not be in a condition that it is growing around itself. Meaning, the boss is always right. If he is wrong, please refer to clause 1. If I am creating such hypotheses which are circular in nature, which means that I will never be able to falsify them, such statements are considered as redundant hypotheses because they can neither be tested, neither can they be falsified. Hypothesis has the following 2 parameters. First and foremost, they have to be testable, and the second is they should be falsifiable. The moment I am not able to do either of them or any of them, my hypothesis is redundant. So, Joshi ma'am, you will have to first and foremost see whether you require a hypothesis in the first place. Because if you do not, just because everybody says, what is your hypothesis, does not mean that it has to be a statistical hypothesis. You could even just have an objective to it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Now Deepak Thakkar is asking a question. How to frame a questionnaire for research study on systems and processes for business management and adopting new technologies like blockchain at the operational level as well as the management perspective. Sir, shall I repeat the question?
No, please ask him, please, Dr. Sheetal, please could you ask him what is he looking at? Because the nature of the firms, nature of where he is going to put. So if you go to look at it in terms of an MSME, the whole structure of the questionnaire is going to change. The moment you look at large scale, if you're going to look at Wipro or Infosys, the structure is going to change drastically. So first and foremost, you will have to identify what is the sample that you're going to that you're catering to.
Sir, he's asking about SME.
Right. So now, when you're looking at SME, what kind of SME is this? Again, you will have to firstly identify, you curtail your sample to a size which is manageable and which has got a single aspect or a single dimension to it. Again, in SME, I can say whether it is manufacturing, whether it is service, what kind.
Textile manufacturing, textile.
Okay, textile manufacturing, good enough. So you're coming to the core of it. Now I'll ask you another question, whether it is power looms or whether they're actually textiles. They're cloth weavers.
Deepak sir, you can unmute your mic and you can ask question.
Sir, I want to know, as I had asked earlier also, am I audible, sir?
Yes, you're audible, ma'am. Go ahead.
Sir, my topic right now, which I have selected, professional preparedness of teachers. So, as you suggested that it will be like qualitative research, qualitative methods if we use, this will be more applicable to the topic. But then in qualitative, actually, what are the sub points, sir? What actually we have to do?
I'm not saying that qualitative. I am saying you will have to define, before converting qualitative aspects to quantitative, you will have to define your dimensions. Right? So wherever you can get numbers for your work, like for example, when you say professional, that's the reason I said, whether your teacher is a graduate, a postgraduate, whether whether he has cleared his debt, SLED, or whether he's a PhD, he's a postdoc, whether he is young, old, etc., whether he's computer savvy. Here you have got numerical values or binary values. Right?
Yes.
Wherever you have numerical values, you have got an objective measure.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Right? But the moment I say whether the knowledge, like for example, I'll say knowledge. So right now I am a researcher. Somebody tells me about something about medicine, I will not be able to answer. So in the case that I'm measuring knowledge, I require to have a conversion of a subjective measure into objective measure.
Yes, sir.
Because the problem happens, यानी ये हो जाता है, दिक्कत क्या हो जाती है, आपको कितना ज्ञान है किसके बारे में, अब आप भगवान तो नहीं होंगे जगत ज्ञान होने के लिए, ठीक है, तो आपको उस ज्ञान को आपको ढंग से संक्षिप्त में बताना है जिससे कि all the dimension of your understanding, because this is your study, your understanding should get captured in it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Shaheen Dalal is asking question. For quasi-experimental quantitative study, we need to put hypothesis and assumption both when hypothesis is measurable.
Yes, but again, what kind of experiments are you carrying out? Could you ask
Shaheen, can you
Shaheen?
extend your question? Yes, please.
Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you're audible, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I'm going to check the assertiveness behavior of certain groups, when they will be having some of the assertiveness behavior like giving answer in assertive way or something like that is measurable. All these things I will check it previously also on the Likert scale. Okay,
Right.
and then after doing my intervention or manipulation, I will check it again in my post-case also. So my hypotheses are measurable because I'll do in my quasi-experimental, I'll do my pre-case, and then again after doing my manipulation, I'll do my post-case. In that case, when my hypotheses are measurable, do I supposed to write assumption also?
Ma'am, your hypothesis itself is assumption. Please understand this part. It is a pre versus post condition. Whether interventions impact assertiveness of individuals or of communities is your hypothesis. If the answer, if the intervention has, so here if your null hypothesis is there is no impact of your treatment on the group, the alternative is automatically the reverse. There is a positive or there is an impact of your treatment on the community. So you only have to specify the null hypothesis. Automatically, the alternative hypothesis gets defined.
So null hypothesis I have to put because there will be no difference also. But then I have to put operational and research hypothesis as well with that.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot.
Madam, please understand this part. Whenever you are giving hypotheses, your research hypothesis, it is the larger structure of your study. Whenever you come down to the objective or your operational hypothesis, these are your sub parameters that you are testing. Okay. So both of them have to be specified explicitly. Yes. So there's a primary objective and there's a secondary objective.
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Akshay Patel is asking, sir, please suggest the difference between deliberate sampling, simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified, quota, and cluster sampling, and also multi-stage and sequential sampling. All types of sampling.
Yes, basically all types. Please understand the word random is very wonderful. Everybody wants to use random sampling. Unfortunately, none of us does a random sampling, especially in social sciences. None of us do random sampling. Random sampling is a condition where the complete population is in a list form. That means each element of your population is designated. ये समझ लीजिए आप बात, हर एक जन को अगर आप एसोसिएट कर सकते हो और आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हो, तो उस पॉपुलेशन में अगर की हुई सैम्पलिंग है तो ही वो रैंडम सैम्पलिंग गिनी जा सकती है, नहीं तो वो रैंडम सैम्पलिंग होती ही नहीं है। एट बेस्ट आप उसको कन्वीनियंस सैम्पलिंग कह सकते हो। आदमी सामने से आया, आपने उसको प्रश्न पूछा, उसने आपको जवाब दिया, दिस इज कन्वीनियंस सैम्पलिंग। Simple random sampling is a condition where each and every element of your population has a probability of 1 upon n, where n is the size of your population. For example, teachers in PP Savani is my population. If I randomly select, say, Sadafara ma'am or Sheetal ma'am, they have their probability is 1 upon n, where n is the total faculty strength of PP Savani University. Here is the condition where I have got simple random sampling. Now, the second condition, the next level, is called as the stratified sampling. Stratified sampling happens when I have split up the sample or the population into subtypes, namely based on males, females, age group, etc., etc. Based on that, if I say that half of my population is males and half of my population is females, and I have supposed to collect 10 people from them, 5 have to be male and 5 have to be females for a proper representation in my sample. Okay. After that, whenever I am able to create subclasses, it becomes stratified. Then you have got something called as a cluster sampling. Cluster sampling happens when you have got clusters created, and when each cluster is assumed to be a representative of the larger structure. Example, industrial cluster की बात कर लेते हैं. Surat has a textile cluster, there has a diamond cluster. It has got as many as 3 textile clusters in Surat and the surrounding areas. If I pull out one of the cluster and I show it that cluster is representative of the remaining 2 clusters, that becomes a cluster sampling. Then on, you have got deliberate sampling. Deliberate sampling happens only and only in the case where the phenomenon is rare in nature. For example, the example that I gave you was a condition of the Bombay blood group. For example, blood donors of ORH negative blood group. For example, people suffering from tumors. Or for example, people who have recovered out of, say, hepatitis C. Rare phenomenon wherein the likelihood of you finding a sample is not so common. In that case, you require snowball or deliberate sampling. Am I clear about it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Again, quota is again like a similar to cluster sampling, and then you've got the other kind of thing is that you consider every 4th individual in the population. That is also done, and that's also part of the stratified sampling. But then you have to ensure that all these the whole sample is homogeneous in nature. The moment the homogeneity goes away, you cannot do either a random sampling or a stratified sampling based on numbers.
Okay, Nachiket sir. Now, Dr. Kirti is asking, can plagiarism apply on materials and methods while writing any thesis?
If you have not, look, normally no individual, no 2 researchers will have identical methods and methodologies. Please understand that part. Because in case you have a common method and methodology, why do you require to do the study? Because your sample is also going to be identical. I'll tell you the classic example of Mumbai University. One of these professors apparently said, there is a PhD topic, somebody is doing it in education psychology. The person, he said that this topic is mental state of 12 standard failures of Gujarat of Maharashtra board. So we all of us were, yeah, oh, it's a very wonderful topic. He said there are as many as 120 PhDs on the same topic. Right? So that is the thing. So normally your methodology can be common, but your methods will be different. Your sampling would be different. So moment there is a change in sampling, your sample is going to change. As a consequence, there is nothing like plagiarism in it. Just by using it, I'm using quantitative or qualitative or mixed method doesn't mean it's plagiarized.
Sir, hypotheses are related to your objectives, sir?
Yes, very much.
Okay, sir.
Ma'am, the logic works that your research questions come first.
Okay.
From the research questions, there are two paradigms in it. Some people say that the objectives come first, the objectives are transformed into research questions, and the research questions are converted into hypotheses. The other paradigm says your research questions are converted into objectives and the objectives are subsequently converted into hypotheses. So there are these two paradigms that exist. So you can use either of them. There's no issues of it, there's no controversy in it.
Okay. So if we have, for example, 3 objectives, then 3 hypotheses should be there.
Madam, again I'm saying, if it is numerically testable and as a treatment, then only you're going to have an hypothesis.
Otherwise, no need. Okay.
There is only an objective then. You're exploring the objective.
Okay. Okay. Okay, sir.
Sir, now Akshay Patel is again asking, sir, according to you, which problems are encountered by researchers in India? Which problems are encountered by researchers in India?
In what fashion? Because there's a lot of problems, right from quality of data. It starts with quality of data, response rates, then analysis of. The problem is, as a researcher and as a faculty in a research institute, we find that teachers themselves are not sure about what kind of research they are undertaking. Right? Basic problem is that if you have not defined your problem, how are you going to say that this is my problem and this is my objective and this is my hypothesis? So right from quality of data to identification, everything is a problem. So be precise about what you want to say, because secondary data is a problem. Government report data is a problem. And the third, there is a critical part of it. People who are into social science and management studies, it's my humble request, please do not try to map your work with American or European studies. The underlying sample and the data is different. If you are going to show identical results, that just means that you have copy pasted the research of those places. You will never have identical conclusions. This is my humble request. The moment you show that there is something different, that itself is contribution to the Indian scientific studies. Except for people who are into physics and chemistry and biology, their things are different because those are universal sciences.
But most of the research papers which we are reading, literature review we are doing, we are finding, sir, all international authors. Indian authors we are not getting only for literature review. At least for my subject.
What is the subject?
Sir, my subject, professional preparedness of teacher.
Right. The reason being, ma'am, what is the method of search that you're following?
Pardon, I did not follow, sir.
I said, what is the nature of search you're following?
Nature of search, I am seeing in Research Scholar and Google. I am searching in this Shodh Ganga.
मैम क्या आपने scholar.google.com के ऊपर कभी गई हैं?
which one, sir?
Google.com नहीं, scholar.google.com.
हाँ नहीं सर, वो देखती हूँ
उसके अंदर
सर।
भी जाइए, उसके अंदर देर आर दिस ऊपर ऊपर एक ये है बटन है, उसके ऊपर आप क्लिक करेंगे तो वहां एडवांस सर्च का ऑप्शन आता है। एडवांस
Okay.
सर्च के अंदर जाइए, उसके अंदर इट विल से which words to be excluded, which words to be included.
Okay.
वो सारा आप भर के सर्च करिए। You are only and only restricting yourselves to authentic scientific research material which is listed in Google Scholar.
Okay sir. Thank you sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, there is one more question from Khalida Siraj. Sometimes et al. We write it after author's name.
Yes.
Et al. Also shows plagiarized. So what should we do then?
Well, et al is not to be considered plagiarized. Don't worry. Et al is a common word. This is like others and others is how we look at it. Et al is not to be used as plagiarized. Don't bother. Actually, plagiarism सॉफ्टवेयर के अंदर आपके पास फिल्टर्स मिलते हैं, आप उसके अंदर डालोगे अगर et al not to be included तो वो छोड़ देता है उसके बाद।
So there is question from Azhar Iqbal. Can a student of finance and commerce can research in area of social inclusion?
Yes, very much. You can. There are people who are doing it. I mean, in terms of what is called financial inclusion and social inclusion, there are people who are working on it. One of my colleagues is working on importance of SHGs in financial and social inclusion. Please understand that there is nothing like interdisciplinary. Is all about identifying what do you say, not tangential but allied fields which has importance for your field. Historically they used to say that science is science, engineering is engineering, social science is social science, medicine is medicine. But that is not no more the case. Everything is merging into a unified subject now.
So there is a question from Riddhi. She is asking, can you please further explain your word a priori? APRIORI.
A priori यानी पहले से पता होना.
Okay.
You know something from before. I mean, not you, but the data is there available with you, so it is called a priori.
And why 10% relaxation given UGC in thesis plagiarism? Why there is 10% relaxation given?
Because like at all, words like at all, million plus cities, etc., 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 also get become. I mean, common words also come under plagiarism. So that's the reason there's a 10% relaxation that has been given to you. It doesn't mean that you copy paste from somebody else's thesis and say it's not plagiarized. दूसरी बात एक चीज याद रखिएगा, आप जैसे सोचते हो वैसे अनेकों लोग इस पूरे दुनिया में सोचते होंगे, ठीक है? तो उसके मुताबिक आपको अगर इफ यू वांट टू प्रूव दैट यू आर अहेड ऑफ अदर्स, यू हैव टू एंश्योर दैट at least something or the other gets published on a regular basis about your thought process. It could be through scientific writing, through journal articles. It could be even your Facebook blog. Make sure that your ideas get reflected some way or the other. लिखा है तो छपेगा, कहां छापना है वो आपको डिसाइड करना है.
Sir, please tell us something more about this. Like you said, no publication of papers. So publication should be related to our current topic, whatever we are.
No, it is nothing of that sort, ma'am.
Okay, any topic. Okay.
छापना ही इसका मतलब ये होता है, देखिए मैम दो चीजें होती हैं. One
Hmm.
is you are extending your understanding of your subject. Other
Hmm.
is you are extending the understanding of your own understanding of some other subject might be.
Hmm.
Like I am
Okay.
interested in, I'm an economist by training. I'm an economist, but I'm interested in automobiles and automobile engineering. But if I publish a paper which is not linked to economics in IEEE on automobile and automobile engineering, I will not be considered. I mean, nobody will consider it as a part of my CV. बोलेंगे भाई तुम तो इकोनॉमिस्ट हो, तुम ये छाप छाप तो लिया इंजीनियरिंग के इसमें, तुम यहाँ क्यों लिख दिखा रहे हो मुझे?
Hmm.
That can be your hobby. So I know this. I had read about this person who's actually a bank accountant in Nagpur, and he has got as many as 6 papers in astrophysics. But
Hmm.
that is his hobby. So he said, I'm not an astrophysicist, but it's my hobby. So I'm an astronomer. I'm interested in astronomy. I keep staring at the sky and I keep publishing.
Recently, I have also written a research paper, and which is going to publish in UGC Care Journal.
Okay.
So I just wanted to know that it is for PhD, like in the process, it is compulsory to publish papers.
Man,
Or
yes and no. It's both now.
अच्छा, okay.
आपका काम यूनिक है. ये करने के लिए आपको पब्लिश करना जरूरी है. लेकिन
Hmm.
the new UGC guidelines have clear cut stated that publication is a method where the guide is pushing the onus of authenticity on the journals, which is actually wrong.
Hmm.
The uniqueness or authenticity of your work is to be determined by the guide and not by the journals.
Hmm. Okay, okay. Okay, sir.
So now Azhar Iqbal wants to know about some best books on research methodology. Books on research methodology.
Well, I'll start with the preliminary. आपको समझना है, देखिए रिसर्च मेथड्स एंड मेथोडोलॉजीज की ढेर सारी किताबें हैं. My guide Professor D.S. Hegde has also written a book on research methodology. There is a book by Paneer Selvam which is the most well-read book across India. But as a novice, please start reading Wikipedia because that has one of the simplest English to read and to understand. And there are even blogs. सिंपल चीजें से कॉम्प्लिकेटेड की ओर जाओ. अगर कोई सीधा का सीधा आपको बोलेगा भैया रैंडमाइज डिजाइन करना है, आपको क्या रैंडमाइज और क्या डिजाइन दोनों ही नहीं पता लगेगा. ये डिजाइन ऑफ एक्सपेरिमेंट करना है. फिशर की किताब है डिजाइन ऑफ एक्सपेरिमेंट पर, स्टैटिस्टिक्स की सबसे अच्छी किताब है गिनी जाती है वो. Somebody said, oh, DOE, Fisher's book. But if you want to understand, start with a preliminary, which is read through Wikipedia, read through online blogs, then pick up a book which is in the form of a Paneer Selvam or Professor D.S. Hegde's book. And then on, you start expanding your understanding because no book can be considered as authentic information. And it like I say, neither am I God, neither is anybody God to know ins and outs of research. So you expand your horizon. It's a brick. You're constructing a wall, you're putting a brick, you're cementing it, you're putting another brick. So you go slow and steadily to understand the whole logic. It takes some time, some patience, but that's the way out.
Okay, Professor Gosavi. So we had so many question and answers, and you answered them so well. And I thank you a lot for such a wonderful session. And we have learned a lot about methodology today.
It's my pleasure.
So yeah. So with this, we would like to end our session today. I hope all the participants have learned a lot today regarding the research methodology from Professor Nachiket Gosavi. It was a wonderful session. So thank you so much once again, Professor Gosar, and thank you all the participants for attending today's session. So let us end the session.
I also thank all the participants. I like thank PP Savani, Dr. Sheetal, Professor Sadafara, all of them. Thanks a lot for being patient. I would have wondered, I would have been honored if this class would have been a non-COVID class, face-to-face interaction, but that would happen sometime down the line.
Sure, sure, Professor Gosavi. We will arrange something like that, and we will call you for, and it will be an honor for all of us to hear you live. So we will definitely do some provision at PP Savan University to have you here. Thank you so much, sir. So with this, we end the session. All the participants are requested to fill the attendance sheet and kindly make sure that all the details that you fill in the attendance sheet, your spellings and everything are correct, because the same will be reflected in your certificates. Thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hachiket sir. Thank you all the participants. Kindly fill the attendance